20 years of PCN Britain, its people, its purpose and its practice. First of all, the people behind PCN Britain. James Roe Adams was the long-serving rector of St Mark's, Capitol Hill in Washington. And in retirement, Jim had established the Centre for Progressive Christianity. In 1996, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Jim was offering an open-ended and searching conversation at the heart of what it means to be religious. There followed a listing of 8 points, a series of ideas which described TCPC's approach to Christianity. Hugh Dawes, when Vicar of St James, Cambridge, had written a book in 1992, Freeing the Faith, A Credible Christianity for Today. After meeting Jim Adams and addressing audiences in the USA, Hugh was asked to be a trustee for the US organisation, and the scene was set to emulate TCPC. Meanwhile, theologians such as Dominic Crossan in the States and bishops in the UK such as David Jenkins and Richard Holloway had already established a liberal critical approach to faith, as of course did Jack Spong, who had already written 8 major books on Christian belief and as Bishop of Newark and world traveller was making waves in the church at large. So PCN began its work under the influence of these theologians and the example set by the United States organisation. There were launches of PCN Britain in 2003 in Kendal and in London. An early conference in Leeds was followed by the 2003 launch in Kendal and in London. Alan Billings and John Hetherington were the key people from St George's, Kendal, plus the University of Lancaster and the Ecumenical Centre there. In London, Jack Spong preached at the morning service in St James, Piccadilly, and the launch of PCN took place that afternoon. Hugh and Jill organised the day, and Charles Headley was Vicar of St James, another key PCN trustee. In 2003, we announced that we were thankful to have honorary advisors in Mary Robbins, at that time serving St James, Piccadilly, the influential hymn writer Fred Kahn, and the brilliant wordsmith and priest Jim Cotter. The wider context in the United Kingdom at that time was the first visit of Marcus Borg to a church in England, when he spoke at a conference at St Mark's, Sheffield, where Adrian Orker was vicar and where the Centre for Radical Christianity was getting into its stride, hosting a number of conferences and seminars. Across the religious spectrum, John Vincent, one-time moderator of the Methodist Church, was writing about radical Jesus and had established the Urban Theology Unit in Sheffield. There were liberal voices in the Church of England finding expression in the Modern Church People's Union, later Modern Church, and the Open Synod Group. And back in 1984, the Sea of Faith movement had brought to prominence Don Cupid, the priest, writer and Cambridge Don. In the United Reformed Church, under the leadership of Donald Hilton and Martin Camrew, Free to Believe began as an informal network of liberally minded Christians. Feeding into this context were issues bearing upon Christianity and its impact upon people's lives, notably the place and role of women in the church, and increasingly the voices of those who felt marginalised by their sexuality. In the UK, organisations such as Inclusive Church came into being in 2003 under its first chair, Giles Fraser, and annual lectures were being given by public figures such as Martin Percy and Linda Woodhead. This then was the context for the beginning of PCN, and the drivers of the movement were themselves part of a whole spectrum of people, lay and ordained, of different denominations and contexts, who were important and to whom we owe a huge debt of thanks. Over the last 20 years, we've been thankful to those early trustees, treasurers, our group facilitators, our administrative staff, our web editors, our librarian. And most of all, thanks to those members of PCN who have helped PCN to grow and to develop. A very big thank you to all our members. In this second section, we ask, how was PCN Britain to define its purpose and articulate that purpose as a network? The USA had taken the title Centre for Progressive Christianity, and all three words begged different questions. Where was the centre? What did the USA and ourselves mean by progressive? And how were we to define Christianity? The first part was easy. We were not a centre here in the UK, but rather a network of people meeting together who desired to share their experiences and thoughts. In Sheffield, it made sense for the church there, St Mark's, to use the title Centre for Radical Christianity, because indeed it was a church centre reaching out from that base. We were to be, in PCN, a network of groups set up and coordinated at the beginning by Alan Powell. And by June 2004, there were 22 groups active or in the process of being formed. Half of those groups are still in existence. Progressive. Names abound for thinking and action characterised by a dissatisfaction with established norms and traditions. Liberal, inclusive, radical, modern. But the adoption of the word progressive allied us with the movements in the USA and later in Canada, Australia and New Zealand. Many of our members did indeed want to see progress in the ways that churches, denominations and church leaders understood Scripture, ordered worship, built up faith and a church fit for the 21st century. There had indeed been little real progress in seeing the different denominations truly come together, and little evidence of real democracy and allowing of free thinking. We wanted to build a network which was not confined by denominational barriers. We wanted a network which was given some context by the 8 points. The third word, of course, after network and progressive, was the word Christianity. The movement in the United States was always focused on the churches and their teachings, and most members of PCN Britain have been over time church members, active or past. Most of our members who were quick to sign up belonged then to their local church or were seeking a new church to belong to. The life and teachings of Jesus, as examined and discussed over decades in the search for the historical Jesus, continue to be of great importance, as was the relationship between the Jesus of history and the Christ of faith. The word Christianity then was seen not as a drawback, but rather as an invitation to unpack its meanings in progressive ways. 3 words in our title then defined our purpose, and when we applied to become a charitable status, we had a very open-ended aim, as stated in our constitution. The advancement of the Christian religion in such exclusively charitable ways as the trustees, in their absolute discretion, see fit, or more explicitly then, as stated on our website. The network recognises the value and significance of tradition and scriptures in the shaping of Christian faith, but faith must be of today, not just of the past. We value the 8 points formulated by the Centre for Progressive Christianity in America and adapted for the UK by PCN Britain, not as a creed or a statement of faith, but as an expression of how we live as Christians. From the outset then, we wanted PCN to be an organisation for members and through their influence for churches to become more progressive in their thinking and concerns. We wanted a bottom-up approach, to have equal status for the laity and clergy, and to be accessible for all to join through a low membership fee. The 8 points became an important tool, a useful framework or reference point, if you like, for within the 8 points were raised matters of theology, of the nature of church, of concerns for the diversity of human experience and the pressing needs of our world. These 8 points then became important to us. They in a way defined who we are as people, as we seek God, as we affirm the many ways to experience the sacred, as we recognise what following of Jesus means to us, the importance we attach to hospitality. We seek to build communities. We know that how we behave to others is the fullest expression of our faith. And we hope to gain more insights into the search for understanding than we do in certainty. And finally, to work together within and beyond the church to achieve that just, peaceful and sustainable world which we all wish for. In this 3rd section, we look at our practice. How were we to achieve our aims? What did we do? What did we set out to do? Perhaps what did we fail to do? From the outset, it became clear that we were wanting to meet together as groups in conferences, regional and national, and in such ventures as an annual retreat. Because we knew that there were enormous benefits in bringing people together, and as early as 2003 we had begun to have a PCN retreat using St Daniel's Library in Harden with its progressive thinking warden, Peter Francis. Annual residentials there sometimes had an outside leader, sometimes a trustee would lead the weekend retreat. Titles such as Jesus of Nazareth, the Karen Armstrong book, poetry, mindfulness were all part of the mix. And other venues too were tried, with the Hayes at Swanwick being one. So over the years, these were the folk who kindly led the residential, and it became a very important part of the PCN year. Other organisations were, of course, bringing people together as well. St Mark's had established a pattern of conferences with attractive speakers at its base in Sheffield. Modern Church had a long history of annual residential conferences, as had Free to Believe. And so we worked collaboratively with other organisations, and one high point was that at the 2008 Lambeth Conference, PCN, alongside 17 other organisations, distributed to the bishops at that conference Together in Hope, a collection of 10 essays by leading theologians. We enjoyed working with Modern Church, Inclusive Church, Free to Believe, CRC, Sea of Faith, the Student Christian Movement and others. And indeed that collaboration continues today. One aspect of our collaboration was to be seen at our work together at Greenbelt, when we sometimes have had stalls together or next to each other, sharing a kind of common platform. And then we work together through the Together in Hope working group, producing that series of resources for Christian faith today. Staging conferences in the simpler days before COVID, before Zoom and before high travel costs, members and non-members were happy and keen to attend conferences in different locations with a variety of speakers. We use places such as Lumen in London, the URC base, St James Piccadilly, Bloomsbury Baptist Church, the French Protestant Church, the Quaker Centre at St Pancras, in Birmingham at the church at Cars Lane, in Manchester at its cathedral, in Leeds at the Mill Hill Unitarian Chapel, in Sheffield, St Mark's Broom Hill, and in Edinburgh we held a conference at St John's, Princes Street, and many other venues for our annual meetings, for our Radical Sing Days, for our speaker tours, and more. Such gatherings had many purposes, not least to meet other progressive thinking people, to browse the bookstall, and to deepen the feeling of belonging to a nationwide network. One part of our practice, our work, was to offer learning resources, and one early and very effective course on DVDs at the time, remember those, was the USA's Living the Questions, with a host of well-known theologians and commentators. Many of our conferences recorded, thanks to Chris Avis, and groups were subsequently able to use these recordings in their group meetings. We have, of course, offered resources through our DVD library and articles in our magazine Progressive Voices. And practice also meant showing our concern for the world. We never wanted to form an organisation which indulged in religious talking for its own sake, being so heavenly minded as to be no earthly use. Our 8 points had pointed the way, and from the beginning our members were enjoined to connect the life and teachings of Jesus to the issues of the day, be they poverty, discrimination, inequality, warfare, climate change, and many other issues. PCN became an associate supporter of the Equality Trust and the Charter for Compassion. We made those made of stories films, half a dozen films which concentrated on contemporary issues through the example and lives of people in those films. And through our magazine, Progressive Voices, through our monthly bulletin, through our website, Facebook and Twitter and our social media feeds, and our colourful leaflets were all part of how we tried to effectively communicate the message of PCN Britain. As we look back over these 20 years and reflect about the present and the future, what can we say we have achieved? What did we fail to achieve? And what has changed over the last 20 years to make PCN what it is today? We hope you've enjoyed looking back to the beginnings of PCN, to its network, to its title, to its meaning, to its practice, what we purpose to do over these last 20 years. But now, as you have heard and seen this presentation, perhaps you're wondering what is your part in the future of PCN. What can you contribute today? The trustees would love to hear from you so that the work of PCN can go forward for another 20 years. And who knows what we will have achieved by then. Thank you for listening and watching our presentation.